On August 20th, 2021, EA released the next installment in their long-running Madden NFL football series. Madden 22 is the 33rd title series that began back in 1988 with John Madden Football, and it has had yearly releases ever since. When the series began, it was beloved by football and video game fans for years, well into the 2000s. The Madden name conjured up nostalgic memories of playing football with your friends, creating your own teams and dominating the league, even creating yourself and your friends as players in the game and playing a cooperative franchise in an effort to win the Super Bowl. Memories of deep football experiences focused on allowing the player to be creative and mold the football world to their desires, while also maintaining the veil of realism and authenticity that is essential to a simulation football game. That was the hallmark of the old Madden name. A name that used to stand for something. A name that most of all made people think of fun. Because at their core, that's what sports are. Fun, entertainment that means something to people. And that is what great games should be, first and foremost. No matter how good a game's graphics are, how many features they have, or how much money they make, the true indicator and value of a video game is fun. However, despite this reality, Madden has found a way to suck all of the fun out of its game. When the name Madden's mentioned now, people don't have those fond memories of late-night franchise with their friends, namely because cooperative franchises aren't even in the games anymore. Instead, they think of a bland experience that seems hell-bent on leeching as much money out of its fan base as is humanly possible. This has been an issue for years now, and it's not unique to Madden 22. Most fans agree that Madden hasn't been truly good since the mid-2000s. The last great Madden can be debated. Nobody will ever argue that the games of the last 10 or even 15 years are even anywhere near that conversation. So why is Madden so bad? Why does the mere mention of it make sport fans cringe? Well, there's a large number of reasons for that, but it all boils down to what I said before: fun. This video isn't going to be a chance to show you all the astoundingly bad and hilarious glitches in the game, such as a house appearing on the field, the right tackle position not even existing in the trade screen, and many, many, many more, because you can find those all over the internet right now. So I feel that showing them provides little to no value here. Instead, this video will talk about the issues with this Madden and also Madden as a whole over the last few years. Analyze how we got here, what we can expect moving forward, and hopefully what we can do to improve. I'll also give a rating for Madden 22 on a 1 to 10 scale at the end of the video. So be sure to stay tuned for that at the very end. So why is Madden 22 no fun? Well, starts with the biggest issue the game has had since PS4 and Xbox One released: the gameplay. The gameplay is honestly horrible all around. Frostbite Engine's clearly not designed for a sports title, yet EA forces it into the game every year. This causes massive issues with the physics of the game, where tacklers and runners feel like their momentum means nothing. You'll have a 300-pound defensive lineman hit a 200-pound running back, and it doesn't make sense physically. The running back will just glitch across the screen. The defensive tackle will get completely ran over. It has no actual basis in reality or physics. The animations are the real enemy here, though. Even with the physics issues in the game, the main problem is that the user input feels unimportant when compared to the incredible power of animations in this game. Throwing a deep ball, better hope your receiver gets a good animation, because that's how Madden determines if he's going to catch it or not. The animations feel terrible in the games, as players get sucked into tackles and jump balls, even if it makes no sense for that animation to play at that time. Just watch a few games of actual Madden gameplay, and this is apparent. You can see it. Even if you're not someone who's a football fan, it's obvious that this isn't like natural, real-life human movement. Not only do they look and feel clunky, they take the control out of the player's hands completely. This makes the competitive scene a complete joke, because so much of the game just comes down to random chance and not any user skill. When the entire game is determined by auto-generated animations, it really limits the impact a user can have on the game, which hurts not just the competitive scene, but it also makes just general gameplay feel unsatisfying. Even a perfectly called and executed play is at the mercy of the animation gods. This also absolutely kills the fun of franchise mode, where you fight to build a dominant roster and team, because it makes every player feel largely the same, and the actual ratings don't feel like they're well represented. If your receiver is a 65 overall, for example, He will often still get open because of the terrible AI pass coverage, but he'll just randomly drop the pass because he's bad. Or even worse, the defender will look like an anime character, get an enormous speed boost to break up the pass. Makes the game feel cheap. These kind of things happen at every position, not just the receiver and the secondary. And there's no consistency in how the ratings will affect the gameplay because animations just suck players into a predetermined outcome. So why would you want to work hard to draft a superstar player in your franchise if their impact is only as great as the animations will allow them to be? It cheapens the gameplay in every way. Other issues with the gameplay are the horrendous AI defenses, making defense just painful to play. You can only control one player, so you can only make sure that one player does everything right, and zone coverage is still just broken. It's absolutely broken and has been for years. Speaking of broken things, the same broken plays always work on offense. Running slants and crossers because, like I said, the AI is just stupid in coverage. They don't understand how any of actual football coverages work, and it's obvious. I don't know how Madden is this far into its life cycle as a video game, and it hasn't improved this at all. Game-breaking glitches ruin the experience, even when you are finding a way to have fun with the bad gameplay. Things like your stats not reporting properly, they'll just all be zeros. Lagging out of the game completely. Development boost scenarios that you get where it's, you have to get this number of yardage to get this new development trait for your star player, and you reach the yardage but don't get the development trait. Or you don't reach the yardage but you do anyway. It doesn't make any sense, and it ruins your immersion even when the gameplay is working somewhat functionally. And now with this new real player motion system, or whatever they're calling it, that they're using with these next-gen stats that I don't think actually means anything, just something that they keep saying, the players feel so clunky and slow. If you go back and you play NCAA 14, the user input feels so much better. It's so much more impactful and responsive as opposed to Madden 22, which is a game that is 8 years newer than NCAA. 8 years, and that is just absolutely inexcusable. You can't accept that from a game that is 8 years newer than NCAA, made by the same company, and the user input feels worse. Not like a little bit worse. I promise you, it feels genuinely far worse. Then, after the terrible gameplay, so you get past that, the next biggest thing that ruins the fun of the game is the game modes. Put simply, they suck. Face of the franchise is quite possibly the most made fun of game mode in years. The voice acting, when there actually is any, is horrific. The story is uninspiring at best. That's the nicest way I could think to put it. And the difficulty is stupid, because if you're like a quarterback, for example, and you have 500 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, then you'll be, first or second overall pick. But if you're a linebacker and you get 1 tackle, you'll still be the first or second overall pick. Your actual play has no impact on where you get drafted. It makes it, again, completely uninspiring and makes the game feel cheap. This isn't even counting the bugs in this game mode, or the sheer lack of innovation. Things like the house appearing on the field are from this game mode. It just feels bland and lazy, and it's a slap in the face of gamers, especially when compared to NBA 2K's career mode, which admittedly has many of its own issues, but is nowhere near this embarrassing. Then there's the yard. It feels nothing like actual football, so most simulation fans couldn't care less about it. But what about fans of the arcade-style football games, you might ask? Well, it pales in comparison to true arcade-style football games of the past, like Blitz the League, etc., etc. It provides nothing more than just more of the same bland gameplay, microtransactions, and bad cosmetics. Almost nobody that I know even plays it or has tried to play it. I attempted it. It's just not. It's not great. I can't get into it. And this is coming from somebody who loves playing 2K's online career modes like Park and Pro-Am, things like that. The yard is just not anywhere near that level. If this is Madden's attempt to compete with 2K's online career modes like Park and Pro-Am, like I just mentioned, it's pitiful. And they desperately need to reevaluate what they're doing and how they're marketing it. if they want to actually have any hope of competing in that. And I understand that football is a little harder to do than basketball in that way, because basketball you can play 3-on-3 and it's still largely the same game. The game doesn't dramatically change. Whereas football, you can't really do 3-on-3. You can do 7-on-7, but that takes more people. So there are some issues that I will grant Madden with just football as a sport for that, but it still does not excuse the product they're putting out in the field. I mean, it is absolutely embarrassing. Superstar KO is just more of the same issues that you have in the yard, but it is admittedly slightly better. Uses more of an ultimate team-like model, and as a standalone mode, though, it's very shallow. It offers very little in terms of true value, and certainly not enough to justify buying a $70 game. It can be fun to watch some streamers and celebrities and stuff play it, and, here and there I will have fun with Superstar KO, but just it's not nearly enough to support this failing game and franchise as a whole. Speaking of franchise mode is the worst of all to me because of its value to the game. Franchise mode is what Madden was built on. It is the mode that made the game great and gave it endless playability. However, none of that is here. After the hashtag Fix Madden franchise went absolutely viral last year, EA was finally forced to touch this game mode that had been incredibly lackluster and completely untouched and unimproved for a decade. Actually, worse than unimproved. 89 features in total that used to be in Madden franchises from over a decade ago have been completely removed from the game. And yet EA sits and wonders why this game is so shallow of an experience and why people complain about it year in and year out. This year, they overhauled the UI, which is better than before, but really not by enough to be noticeable, so it doesn't garner much respect from me. However, to be fair to them, the new weekly game plans and coaching trees are both welcome additions to the franchise mode, and they show that they at least kind of tried this year. The problem is the implementations of these features is average at best. The game plans are good for the most part, although they still have some issues, especially the fact that halftime adjustments have just the same amount of impact on the game as the game plan that you've been preparing for all week. So if you prepared to stop Saquon Barkley's outside run ability all week, and then you get into the game and they're not running Saquon, they're throwing the ball deep, and you switch your halftime adjustment to defend deep, it's just as effective as your outside run prep was, which makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense at all. And the coaching trees, they're honestly worse than the game plans to me. They're lackluster at best. NCAA's coaching trees were far more impactful and interesting. Those skill trees, you could customize them much more. You had a recruiting skill tree that felt very impactful and was almost a necessity to actually advance your program. The coaching game plan skill tree in that game wasn't quite as great as the recruiting one, but your coordinator skill trees were great. You would get, yes, granted, they were just kind of boosts in the background for the most part. There were some that weren't. But you could feel them. They felt impactful, especially because they were your coordinators. So they weren't even your main focus. Your main focus was your recruiting and your game plan skill tree. And again, this is a game that came out 8 years ago. So, you have to give them a little bit of credit there, a little before their time. Almost everything in these new trees in Madden are unnoticeable in the gameplay because, like I said, they're just behind-the-scenes percentage boosts that don't feel impactful at all. I can't tell when I have a +3 lead block for all my fullbacks. I can't tell that I have that. I can't feel that in the game. It doesn't. I would not know if I had that perk or not unless I had just put it in. So there's just a lot of work that needs to be done with the coaching trees. They are not a finished product by any means, but I have to give them credit for it. They did put them in. That is something. So it's not a total disaster. It can be improved in the future, so it's still, overall, that's a win for the franchise community. The new scouting feature that they have been promising to have this great overhaul with regional scouting. We're finally going to get a good scouting feature instead of the same old boring, bland scouting feature we've had where you just put points into players and figure out what they are and then move on. Finally, you're supposed to get this new overhaul. It's not even in the game on launch. It's still not in the game at the time of this recording. I've heard that it's supposed to be in by the end of September, But what kind of a promise is that to a fan base that's been so starved for innovation? One of your biggest selling points you don't even have in the game on time. How do you expect us to get excited for that? I mean, and then you expect us to still pay the $70 for it up front for a promise of a feature that might be good, we're not sure yet, in 2 months after release, at best? I mean, it's insulting. Honestly, it's insulting to me that is one of their major selling points and things that supporters of EA are clamoring about as this great achievement. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's the promise of a live service that's coming later that might not even be good. It may not even be implemented in September like they said it would. I don't know. That could be a whole nother rant on its own about live service games and my feelings toward that. So I can't really say how much that's going to add to the series as a whole. It might be something that, completely changes franchise all the way around and makes me feel like franchise is far better and more fun to play and gives more replayability. Or it could just be another rushed, pathetic attempt to make more money that just barely does enough to appease the fans. You can't really blame me, and I can't blame anyone else for feeling that way because that's what every other feature that EA has added has been. So how did we get here? Well, that all comes down to the only game mode that I've yet to mention, Ultimate Team. In my opinion, this is one of the things that killed Madden. Yes, EA was already getting lazy before Ultimate Team blew up, and it made it so much worse. EA makes literally billions of dollars off of Ultimate Team game modes across their sports franchises, and therefore that's all they care about. MUT gets patches quickly. They get new content far more often than franchise or anything else, and they do quite often seem to be all EA cares about. EA refunding hundreds of dollars worth of microtransactions to people that were falsely banned because they feel like they gave them a bad product and falsely banned them. What about franchise community? We've been getting a bad product for years now and have been complaining about it, and we don't get anything. We get absolutely nothing because they don't make billions of dollars a year off of franchise mode. They make billions of dollars a year off of MUT. Players spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars every single year on digital card packs, hoping to pull a good player to add to their team, only to do it all over again in just 1 year. And they still have to deal with an absurd amount of glitches, and they still have to play the same boring, bland, broken gameplay. I personally have never been a fan of Ultimate Team modes, and I don't really understand the appeal of paying $70 for a game and then being forced to spend another 100 or more to get good enough players to actually enjoy that game, all while still being disappointed in the quality of the gameplay because they're not going to fix that, and then having to do it all over again the very next year. This is a virtual casino of football cards and virtual currency, and it's gambling, and it's also pay to win, neither of which I feel have any place in video games. I hate pay to win systems, and I don't think that gambling has any place in our video games, and I think that people, in particular the government, should really look at cracking down on some of these microtransactions, especially in loot boxes and packs. But that's a whole nother topic for another video. The addition of MUT to Madden, and more importantly, the rise in popularity and therefore profit from MUT, in my opinion, is a large part of what led us here. EA is making more money than ever for less work than ever in MUT, and that allowed them to stop caring about the gameplay, the features of franchise mode, and ultimately the fun and quality of the game, because those don't matter anymore in the face of all of that profit they're turning for no work and effort from insane MUT spending. I feel that this has corrupted EA to their very core, if they weren't already, and has allowed them to switch the focus from let's make the best football game we can make to instead focusing on let's make the most money we can with the least amount of effort. Mind you, this alone didn't get us this far into the hole, though. Other issues that got us here is Madden simply ignoring their fans because, hey, we're making more money than ever, so who cares if the fans are happy or if they want to see innovation? I'm going to buy the game anyway after all, which leads me to the next factor that I cannot overlook if I want to truly analyze what got us here. It's the exclusivity agreement with the NFL. For 16 years now, Madden has had zero competition because the NFL allows them, and only them, to make games from the NFL. No more 2K football games, which to this day some consider to be the best NFL game ever made, that had way more features and polish over a decade ago than Madden 22 does now. This lack of competition has played just as big, if not an even bigger role, in EA's descent into lazy copy and paste games that are made solely for generating profit. The NFL is just as guilty in this as Madden is. Madden has a record low user score and has for the last 2 or 3 years, and the NFL doesn't care. Why? Well, that's because Madden's making more money than ever before for the NFL. That sadly is all the NFL cares about. Somewhere along the line, the people at EA and in the NFL stopped caring about making good games that their customers enjoyed. They stopped trying to innovate and improve, and instead they just updated the rosters and called it a day. This is at its core why Madden is no fun anymore, and why it hasn't been for over 10 years now. With all of that being said, where do we go from here? Well, that's a question I don't really have an answer to. I don't know how to make people who don't care about the game anymore start caring again, other than to hit them where it hurts, their wallets. The problem with that, though, is there's been a movement to boycott Madden and not pre-order it and stop throwing your money away at Ultimate Team packs for years now. And it's just not working. Despite how bad Madden 21 was with trending hashtags and angry outcry from fans, it still made record profits, only to once again be topped this year by Madden 22, which in all honesty might even be a worse game than 21 because it's been borderline unplayable with all of these new glitches in it. The only real path forward that I see is somehow uniting sports gamers and not buying Madden 23, not spending money on MUT, and demanding good, innovative product instead of the digital vomit we've been receiving for the past 2 years. Unfortunately, though, this feels incredibly unlikely, as it's the only football game out because even NCAA was canceled for so long, so there wasn't even college football as an alternative to turn to. The whole idea of boycotting Madden or hurting their wallet just seems like fantasy land to me. It's not realistic at all. The only realistic hopes I see at fixing this is that when NCAA comes out in a few years, we have to just hope and pray that it's as good as the old ones were and not like Madden is right now. If it is good, which I really hope it is, then maybe, just maybe, more people will buy it and less people will buy Madden because they can get their football fix somewhere else. And this might help force Madden into being innovative and make a good product going forward. However, that alone probably won't be nearly enough to fix Madden. So I'll end with one last thing that I think is the last bastion of hope for Madden and EA Sports. It's 2K. While 2K certainly has many microtransaction issues of their own that need to be addressed, they do undoubtedly make a more quality game than Madden year in and year out. The Madden exclusive license expires in 2026, and if it isn't renewed, then other companies can begin making NFL games of their own, which will force Madden to get their act together or lose their entire market to a better competitor. And when I say NFL games, I of course mean simulation NFL games. Right now, 2K seems to have shown interest in making NFL games because they've made them in the past, and they're currently set to make some arcade-style NFL games at some point in the next few years. However, arcade games probably aren't going to be enough to really turn the tide here against Madden, because Madden can make the simulation games, and that's what everybody wants to play. And without a simulation football competitor, we're really kind of at a loss there. Hopefully, a combination of NCAA returning, 2K making arcade games, horrible user scores, and 2K eventually, maybe, hopefully, getting to make simulation games at the end of the licensing agreement, the exclusivity agreement, will help to force Madden into making good games again. But if that isn't enough, then the ending exclusivity agreement is the only hope. Our only light at the end of this dark and arduous tunnel of terrible Madden games is hoping that the NFL doesn't extend their agreement. which is ultimately almost entirely out of our hands because the NFL clearly doesn't care about user reviews. As promised, my final rating for Madden NFL 22 is a pitiful and pathetic 3 out of 10. A disgrace to the once great Madden name and an insult to true simulation football. The only things that earned it those 3 points for me are incredible graphics, an attempt at improving franchise mode with the new coaching trees, weekly game plans, and momentum, and the hope that the new scouting mode will fix the lousy and lackluster scouting system we've had for years. Which also reminds me, I don't think I remembered to mention momentum earlier in the video as one of the new features they attempted to add. It is in the game, it is kind of a nice addition, but honestly, if I didn't tell you about it and you played a game, you wouldn't know what it was other than it's that annoying piece of HUD that blocks the top of your screen. It's similar to a lot of the coaching skill trees, it just isn't impactful enough on the game. So, just wanted to make sure that I got that in there. With all that being said, though, I do truly hope that Madden gets good again because I'm a die-hard football fan who's still waiting for the next NCAA football game to come out. And if it looks anything like this game, the nation will literally riot and destroy EA. I am convinced that EA will go out into fire and ash if they ruin NCAA. Anyway, that'll wrap up the video. Thanks for sticking with me. If you made it this far in the video, you're truly amazing. I appreciate all your support. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.